come here to kick ass.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the LEGO Icon Set 10338 Transformers G1 Bumblebee, the highly anticipated sequel piece to their pretty amazing G1 Optimus Prime. And how does this one stack up in comparison? Well, let's see what the buzz is about. Bumblebee is modelled after his original G1 vehicle form, that being the iconic Volkswagen Beetle, although surprisingly this is not actually officially licensed, which I do think is for a few reasons, but mainly cost. This guy retails for roughly $90 US, which is considerably cheaper in comparison to Optimus Prime, and for a set that does consist of roughly 950 pieces, honestly I think makes sense. Despite this though, the vehicle mode still looks sharp and is definitely similar in design to the most recent Studio Series Bumblebee, which also tried to go for a slightly more cartoonish, more compact style, but mostly I think they've done a great job, especially when it comes around to the back. The rear bumper and the license plate are loaded with sticker details, which have some pretty neat throwbacks to the original 80s TV show, including a swap out Goldbug plate, which is a direct reference to Bee's rebuilt form. There's also a great callback to the original 2007 live action movie, packed beneath this guy's windshield, that being the Bumblebee air freshener, which is a more PG take on the Bayverse biatch as seen in the film. You are also given the option between having both Autobot insignias visible in either robot or vehicle form, which again I thought was pretty cool, as in either mode, one or the other vanished in the cartoon. Overall, despite not being 100% accurate, I still think they've done a fantastic job. Bumblebee still is easily recognisable as his original G1 self, and the build quality, at least when it comes around to vehicle form, is solid, meaning that when it does come down to burning rubber on that battlefield, Bee will most definitely be packing a punch. Buzzing our way into some comparisons, first up we are whacking out the original LEGO crossover, that being Optimus Prime. Now if you are a scale nut, then unfortunately I don't think the sizing between these two works out too well, but as companion pieces there is no denying that they look banging. Honestly, I think it is sick that we are now at a point where we are seeing official LEGO Transformers mashups, and for these two being some of the first, honestly I think we're mostly off to a great start. For some general mainline comparisons, first up we have the Studio Series 86 Bumblebee, which as I mentioned previously, I really do think was kind of the inspiration behind this Bumblebee. They appear to have again gone for a slightly more cartoonish look in comparison to the Earthrise / Netflix Bumblebee, which was way more inspired by a real life Volkswagen Beetle. So at the end of the day, it really is just going to come down to whether or not you guys prefer animation accuracy or something slightly more realistic. And rounding things off, no Transformers review is ever complete without whacking out the myth, the legend that is the Earthrise Optimus Prime. And for this being a LEGO Bumblebee, it is an absolute beast in comparison. Trust me, this guy is most definitely packing a punch when it does come to size. Stinging our way through this guy's transformation, if you are a fan of Transformers, then unfortunately I don't think you're going to be too mad when it comes down to the first step, which would be to take a hold of the windshield and detach this. So sadly there is some part swimming required, but to be fair I don't think it's too bad, as we will be able to repurpose this later on in the video. Then for the next step we're going to take a hold of these doors and begin to swing those babies there outwards. Again guys, be sure to do exactly the same on the opposite side. Then for the next step we can take a hold of the bumper and begin to spin this here down. We are then going to take a hold of these components and begin to swing these here forwards. Once that's complete, we can then take the main hood of Bumblebee and begin to slide these here forwards all of the way also. Then for the next step, we are going to take a hold of these components and begin to swing these here upwards. And again guys, make sure to do the same on the opposite side. With that now complete, we can then spin around here to the back. You are going to want to lift up this component and then take a hold of the rear bumper and begin to slide these babies here downwards, exactly like that. Then for the next step, we are going to take the back sides of the vehicle form and begin to slowly pry those there outwards. We can then begin to rotate this here upwards, exactly like that. Again, make sure to do the same on the opposite side, so detach the forearm and begin to reverse the shoulder joint all the way around. Then for the next step, we can take a hold of the upper and the lower half and begin ratcheting this here upwards until you eventually reach this point. Once that's complete, we can then take what will become the hip skirt of the robot mode and begin to slide that there forwards. With that now complete, we can then make use out of this ratchet joint and begin to slide this here all the way backwards, just like that, because now we are going to make use out of this second ratchet joint and begin to hinge this here forwards all of the way. Now once you reach to around about this point, here is where you can begin to take that first ratchet joint, arch it backwards again slightly, then take a hold of the chest unit and slide this here all the way down until eventually Bumblebee should be looking exactly like this. It is now at this point where you can begin to spin down here to the base and separate the legs directly down the middle. We are now going to take what will become the front part part of the foot and begin to ratchet this here upwards. Again guys, making sure to do the same on the opposite side. With that now complete, we can then spin around here to the back of Bumblebee. You are first of all going to take these panels and compress these here downwards. We can then take what was originally the side doors of B and begin to compress these here inwards all of the way until eventually they look exactly like this. For the next step, we can then take a hold of the shoulders and begin to ratchet those there downwards. Coming back around to the front of Bumblebee, we can then take what was originally the front hood and begin to slide these here over the top of the ankle joints. With that complete, we can then spin to the side of Bumblebee. You are going to want to take a hold of this panel, slide it here upwards, and then begin rotating around at what will become Bumblebee's wrist joint. Once that's complete, we can then completely begin to splay open the fingers exactly like this. And again guys, making sure to do the same on the opposite side. So fold that panel up, rotate around here at the wrist, and begin extending those fingers there downwards. With that complete, we can then come back to the chest unit of B, take a hold of these components, and begin to swing these here alongside the side of the chest. We are then going to take a hold of this section and collapse this here all the way down. We can then spin around to the back of Bumblebee, take a hold of this panel, and begin to collapse this here backwards. With that complete, we can then whack back out the windshield. You are then going to want to begin to compress this here inwards, and then take a hold of those side view mirrors and compress those there downwards. We are then going to take the jetpack and attach this here into the back of Bumblebee, completely finishing off his look. Buzzing his way into the battle, here is Bumblebee, now fully transformed into his robot mode. And it's definitely interesting. Like his alt mode, I think that most of the inspiration here was taken from his original G1 design, but there is no doubt that they have definitely taken some creative liberties, especially when it comes down to the design of his arms. These by far have to be my biggest issue with the way he looks. I am just not a big fan of them at all, mainly because the shoulders are just massive, and when you put those against the incredibly dinky forearms, things become to look a little funky. I will say though that the rest of the robot mode is pretty banging, especially the printed on face alongside the shape and design of his helmet. This does look pretty great. I also really love the foot design. Surprisingly, this is pretty spot on for a Lego, and a nice added touch would be the additional rubber tyres on the base to create for more friction to stop him from toppling over and just exploding. The back of the figure, as expected, isn't too interesting, but mostly does clean up well, especially when it comes down to the legs. I do like how they have repurposed the windshield and have doubled it into what they are officially calling a jetpack. But let's be real, if you're like myself and a fan of those Michael Bay films, I'm taking this as a direct throwback to his door wings. Overall, as a Transformers fan, Lego Bumblebee is an absolute dream come true, but compared alongside Optimus Prime, I don't think visually this is as impressive. Again, mainly just due to the design of his arms. I would, however, love to see this lineup continue, maybe with a Decepticon as the next entry for the Autobots to go up against. Checking out what sting this bee is packing, up first we do see the return of his iconic blaster. Now for some crazy reason this has been completely cast in blue plastic. Now I'm not sure if maybe I've just been lied to all my life, but I always thought that Bumblebee's iconic sidearm was always grey, so it is kind of strange to see this for the most part cast in blue, but to be fair guys, when it does come down to the design, pretty spot on to how this did originally appear in the classic G1 cartoon series. The next accessory is a Lego Bumblebee display plaque. Now this is almost identical in terms of design to the one that we did see included with Optimus Prime. This is also where you can begin to store some of the extra accessories, including the leftover license plate and even Bumblebee's blaster. Buzzing our way through some robot mode comparisons, first up we have the Lego Optimus Prime, who I definitely think was a slightly more true to form design in comparison to Bumblebee. Despite him clearly taking inspiration from his original G1 look, there definitely is a disparity between the two, and again guys, I think it's mainly got to do with his shoulder design, but as companion pieces, there is no denying that stacked up alongside each other, they still do look pretty wicked. Next up we have the Studio Series 86 Deluxe Class Bumblebee, the Earthrise / Netflix Bumblebee, then last but by no means least, the myth, the legend that is Earthrise Optimus Prime, and much like when in vehicle form, this Bumblebee is an absolute beast in comparison to the majority of the mainline figures. Turning to Bumblebee's posability, as this guy is made out of Lego, to be honest I really wasn't expecting much, although to my surprise the upper half is most definitely packing a punch. So to begin with, the head can look up, it can look down, it can tilt side to side and also turn both left to right. The shoulders have no issues in spinning both forwards and backwards, and also clicking inwards roughly to that far, although eventually, much like the Studio Series Hot Rod, these definitely do have a tendency to smack Bumblebee into the side of the head. Despite the way this guy transforms, the elbows can click both forwards and backwards, the wrist can rotate, and each and every single one of the fingers are individually articulated, meaning that you can definitely get pretty funky with those, although much like Optimus Prime from the waist downwards, this guy is severely limited, and I think it's just due to all of the mass that he has when it comes up to the torso. So there is no waist articulation, mainly due to how he transforms, and there's also no knee joints, which despite being something which I would have loved to have seen, I believe this is absent just to make this guy a little more structurally stable when on display. But with that being said, the hips have no issues in kicking out to the side, moving backwards roughly to that far, although unfortunately are severely limited when it does come down to the forwards range, mainly just due to the design of this guy's hip skirt. And then finally, despite lacking an actual angle pivot, the foot has no issues in turning both side to side, mainly to allow for a slightly more dynamic stance. So, to wrap up on this review for the LEGO Transformers G1 Bumblebee, personally, I actually really like this. I think for the most part, it's a really well engineered product, and the fact that we are now seeing transforming Legos, I think is just mental. I also don't think the price point for this one is too bad. As mentioned previously, this will retail for roughly $90, which in comparison to the price point that we did see for Optimus Prime, I actually think is kind of sweet, which may be the reason why that VW is not rocking the official license. But despite that, as mentioned previously, I still think it does a pretty good job in matching how he did show up. The only thing which I'm not the biggest fan of, again, would be those massive shoulders, but to be fair guys, considering that this is a Lego, those panels had to go somewhere, and in this case, it was on the arms. But mostly alongside Optimus Prime, whilst it may not be as accurate as him, I still think it's a pretty solid companion piece, and the fact that we now have a second entry makes me think that maybe we could see a few more characters down the line. I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this Bumblebee down in the comment section below. What do you guys think? I want to thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, transform and roll out!